and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Lewis. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, thank you for listening to us. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review. But you know you got to subscribe, because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Mondays, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, that means we're live on YouTube. Go over to the A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers YouTube channel and subscribe there. Hit that notification bell. If you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we go live, and you can literally be a part of the show. Come hang out with us, comment. We love going back and forth with everybody. It's always a great time. At Charlie_Bros, at Zach T, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports, A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. All righty. The academics are out of the way. It is a beautiful day here in East Tennessee, Zach. I don't know what it's like over your way. Got a little bit of that spring in the air. I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be like really nasty storms this weekend. So that's very, spring in East Tennessee like. It's going to be fun. What's up, man?
And it's one of my favorite times of the year, really. After the time changes, you get some daylight, March Madness, conference tournaments, some golf majors coming up. Spring training's in full effect. College baseball's, already a month in the books. So it's a fun time of year. A lot of great sports. The NBA kind of finally gets interesting this time of year. It's like the teams actually start trying here this last month of the regular season. It's really the only month of NBA worth watching, but it's an underrated time of year for sports. I know we love the fall, all that comes with football and college football and the NFL, but this is a fun time of year too for me.
It truly is magnificent, though, because I mean, I even love, as a college basketball junkie myself, you just get like Lipscomb playing for a spot in the NCAA tournament. And, it's a freaking like SoCon championship game. Teams that I would never watch on any other night, but a bid to the NCAA tournament is on the line. And it is the most compelling sports you will ever watch. It's so great. The emotions, the happiness, and the incredible sadness at the end with the team that loses. It's the absolute best. I could not love it more. And then on top of that, it is a beautiful day outside. So a win-win all the way around, and we are going to talk about all of it. Well, I guess it wasn't a win-win all the way around for Tennessee basketball this week. They did finish out the regular season with a win over South Carolina, but they also lost to Ole Miss and probably lost any shot at a number one seed. Although at the same time, you had some teams that got wins so good over the last week that maybe Tennessee never had a shot at a number one seed in the first place. I don't know. We'll talk about all of that. Football kicked off spring practice, and that's another special thing that happens this time of year, that, it's not just March Madness. Everybody loves a good early look at the football team. And we got this baseball team, Zach. Holy cow. I was watching one of those guys. I got suggested it on YouTube. I think it was SEC Unfiltered. Maybe they do baseball coverage, and the guy on there was like, I think we got to start talking about if Tennessee baseball actually got better after winning a national championship. It's insane. So we're going to discuss all of that on the Big Orange Podcast tonight, right after I tell you about the good folks at Zen Sports. It is March, and that means Zen Sports has launched a new VIP Players Club sweepstakes, the Big Bucket Club sweepstakes. One grand prize earns a $10,000 bonus bet on the NCAA championship game, or $5,000 cash. Then you have 20 smaller prize winners, and they'll get a $100 bonus bet on the NCAA championship game, or $50 cash. Earn entries on every bet you place in Zen Sports in the month of March, and earn 10 times entries on parlay bets. Plus, if you sign up and make your first bet with code A2ZTN, that is ATOZTN, you'll earn 500 bonus entries into the Big Bucket Sweepstakes. Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for the full list of rules. You can also earn that $100 no danger first wager that we've been telling you about for so long now. Zen Sports betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 or older and located in Tennessee. $5 minimum wager to qualify for entry. Terms and conditions apply. No danger. First wager limited. Plus 500 odds to qualify. Qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds for any leg of the entry of at least minus 250 American odds for clarity. A wager of minus 251 does not qualify. Zen Sports. Go download it. Get in on the sweepstakes. We're back to the super long qualifier at the end there, Zach. Good times. But it is cool. Sweet sweepstakes that they got going on there. And let's get right to this, Zach. Tennessee maybe had a shot at a 1 seed. That's what we talked about last week with the basketball team. And, it seemed like it was kind of right there. And I would say pretty much everything that could go wrong for you to get a 1 seed went wrong in the last week, except for losing to South Carolina. That's the worst thing that you could have done. That would have, all but killed that off completely. But Florida goes to Alabama and beats Alabama pretty handily. There's an argument to be made right now that Florida's the best team in America at the moment, which is so annoying. I can't even begin to talk. They've got all their guys healthy. They look awesome. I think even though he might be a creep, they got a good coach over there.
Yeah, I thought their coach was going to be in jail before the end of the year, but apparently not. I don't know that. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but that was what I thought was going to happen.
That it was a Title IX thing. I think it got dismissed or something. I'm not totally sure. And so I don't want to say too much there. But regardless, seems like he's a pretty good basketball coach, and they are playing excellent basketball. Auburn on the downswing, although they pretty much have a number one locked up. They're still susceptible to giving other teams their best win of the season. And then they went and did that with Alabama. Alabama went to Auburn, and on a last-second shot, kind of how Tennessee beat Alabama, Alabama beat Auburn. And so you have Alabama, who you were competing with for a 1 seed. They win at Auburn. You have Florida, who you were competing with for a 1 seed. They go and they win at Alabama. Kind of the worst of all circumstances there. And then you go to Ole Miss in a game that, in terms of losing, no one should be ashamed of. Like that Ole Miss team is good. They're a tournament team. Chris Beard is an awesome coach. He's coached a team all the way to a national title game before. It's not crazy that Tennessee lost at Ole Miss, but in that spot, that was pretty frustrating. I'm not going to lie, Zach. I don't want to talk too negative because the season overall has been great, but that was tough.
Yeah. I mean, for me, really the only thing that game meant was the number 1 seed stuff that you're kind of talking about. As far as who this Tennessee team is, the outcome of that game didn't really change, in my opinion, either way. I mean, it was at Ole Miss. It was their senior night. They were kind of playing inspired there, especially in the second half. Brakefield had a ridiculous second half. The shots were just falling, bouncing on the rim, going in. Seems like everything was just kind of went Ole Miss's way. I mean, if you've played basketball at any level, whether you're in middle school or to the collegiate level, you just have those games sometimes when you're playing on somebody else's floor and you're like, is there something up with the rims? Like, seriously, is there something that they've done? Because it seems to go the home team's way sometimes. And that was just one of those games. Tennessee could have done some things better, of course, but that just felt like, sometimes it's the other team's night. And that's what that game was to me, just given the circumstances. But yeah, it is unfortunate when you got a number 1 seed on the line. You would like to come out and win that game because you're a better team. But I still think Tennessee's just as capable of getting to the Final Four as I did before that game.
Yeah, it was particularly just irking to me because if you watch that game in totality, you would definitely look and go, Tennessee's a better team here. Like overall, if they played this game 10 times, Tennessee wins it 6 of them, and there was that factor. The offense was good. The offense really just kept answering. You had a lead for a big part of that Ole Miss game. And then kind of gave it away at the end, but just they could not get a stop. And that was so hard to watch with a team that has just built their entire identity around hard-nosed defense of just looking and going, how are we having these breakdowns constantly? And then you're missing. I mean, you basically gave the game away on an offensive rebound for Ole Miss. Got an offensive rebound, put it right back up and in. That was the shot that you lost on.
Did you feel like defensively for Meshack, that was a bit of a tough ask for him? He's guarding guy, bigger bodies. That's a tough matchup, I thought.
They always put him on the toughest dude, and he has delivered time and time again. I mean, make no mistake about that. He won Defensive Player of the Year for Field of 68. And if you don't follow those guys, good college basketball centered outlet. And he's just been the stalwart, like the best defender in America when he really puts his mind to it. But we got afraid of fouling down the stretch. And yeah, I mean, and Ole Miss was just running stuff that's not even their identity. They have much more been like, they went to Alabama and beat Alabama at Alabama's game. They just absolutely shot the lights out from three. They got the Padula kid, who's a really good 3-point shooter. And, they have sort of that setup of like kind of every guy on the floor can make a three. And I mean, you were bigger than them. And that's why the rebounding thing was tough to swallow. Oh, God. It was bad. And I tweeted this out, kind of got people upset, but it really was like kind of not the whole deal on the line with this one. I mean, it wasn't an NCAA tournament game, but really like the first number 1 seed in the history of the program is on the line. It's March. And of course, a Barnes team blows it in that spot. Like, I hate being cynical like that because Barnes will leave Tennessee as the best coach in the history of this program, period. He will be. He deserves every bit of that accolade. The man should go into the Hall of Fame as a first ballot guy. He's been incredible. The career resurgence that he's had is second to none. It's crazy what he's done in his time here at Tennessee. Also, he's had shortcomings in March. Like it's two conversations that you have to have. And if you only tweet about one of them, if you only tweet about one and it's profuse praise for Barnes, you get the guys that hate Barnes and they're like, well, but he never wins in March. And then if you say like, well, that was tough. Barnes has a really tough time winning in March. And everybody's like, but he's the best coach we've ever had. And blah, 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 blah. It's both things. It's okay to say it's both things. Yeah. Like you can be level-headed about that. But it just was. We're just like, seriously? Come on. They did it last year. They win and they won that super tough game at South Carolina. South Carolina having a great season last year. You win at South Carolina, clinch the SEC, and then go home and blow it against Kentucky with a one seed on the line. So that was tough too. I don't really want to get into that because there's really no point. I mean, you have another chance for a good run here in March, but it was just a part of it. But
I think the important thing is that they got ultimately you get the double bye in the SEC tournament though.
Yes.
I think that was super important because 3 games max that you're going to be playing if you win all 3 somehow. Or if you just win 2, then it's 3 games max you'd be playing.
And Mike says it here in the comment. He says it doesn't really matter. They'll be a 2 seed regardless. We didn't really know that at the time of the Ole Miss game because we only knew about Florida winning at Alabama, but that really is true. I think Florida is going to clinch that unless, what is it? I don't even know.
Duke, Florida, Auburn, who?
It would be Duke, Florida, Auburn, Houston.
If Auburn loses Friday, do you think that? I mean, they lost twice last week. They lost to A&M and Alabama. So
here's a tough thing that's floating out there. I think if Michigan State wins, so Michigan State just won the Big Ten. If they win the Big Ten tournament, they'll be right there for that 1 seed.
Never count out Tom Izzo in March. He's everything Rick
is
in March.
Exactly. So I mean, he has just pulled crap out of the hat for years and years and years in March. Yes, I mean it's absolutely ridiculous. And so they're right there. I watched them play Michigan on Sunday as a good basketball team. They're a very good basketball team. So
that game got a little chippy too there at the end.
Oh yeah,
that was fun.
Michigan, they got that dude from FAU that beat Tennessee in the Sweet 16, and he's their coach now. And they were doing some like a guy wasn't it a guy was going out for his final on senior day, and he wanted to stand at midcourt, and Michigan players were standing at midcourt and they refused to move. Like, just come on, don't do that. Like, it's friggin' sports. That's stupid. But hey, regardless, they're good. They're right there too. They're probably gonna win the Big Ten tournament, and they'll be right there for the 1 seed on top of everybody at Florida, Alabama.
It'd be interesting if Auburn fell out of that spot because of kind of that late season. I want to say collapse. It's just like they wrapped up the SEC regular season and they just kind of.
And I don't think that they'll. So let's say Tennessee makes it to the semifinal and beats Auburn. They'll probably still be a 1 seed, but they might not be. I bet Duke takes the number 1 up because Duke is going to just walk right into the ACC title here. I mean, Louisville's the number 2 team in the ACC, and they're not even. I mean, Tennessee went and won at Louisville by 30 earlier this season. So and Louisville's gotten better. They have a really good coach. It's a talented basketball team, but yeah. So I could see Duke taking that overall number 1 spot, but I don't think Auburn's going to fall out of number 1. That just, seems a little far-fetched, but we'll see. I would guess, it's going to be Auburn versus Florida. Auburn. How did the bracket fall? Would it be Auburn or Alabama? Auburn versus Alabama, maybe in the final 2, or it could be us versus Alabama. It could be like that. That's what I would think. Maybe Kentucky pulls something, but they're also on the other side of the bracket. I was really hoping we play Kentucky.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have another shot after those 2 games.
It makes me sick that, and maybe we both reach the title game in some weirdness, but other than that, that's not going to happen. But hey, so you have the SEC tournament now. Maybe the number 1 spot is all the way off the board. Just too much stiff competition for you. But now you turn to March. And here's the facts on the ground. I tweeted this out right before we did the show. According to Kim Pom metrics, which I love, they're always just a really good indicator of how good basketball teams are. This is the best team that Rick Barnes has had coming into March. They have metrics very similar to last year, except they're better on offense and defense both, which is insane. And so, I mean, with that fact, it doesn't feel like that at all, does it? Like, you just not having the star player and the guy who could light up and kind of carry you with Connect last year, for some reason, it feels like still like, this is probably a Sweet 16 team, isn't it? Like, again, it's not, I don't want to be that cynical guy, but am I wrong, Zach? Are you feeling that same way?
Yeah, but I think we might be like a bit, I won't say misguided, but kind of as tough as the SEC's been this season, I don't think we really know how good Tennessee and some of these other SEC teams are, because they've been beating up on each other all season, and that's been the best conference in America. You get outside of that and you play some teams outside the SEC, and I thought this was really interesting. Rick Barnes said after playing South Carolina that they kind of played a different style game, trying to possess the ball, the type of game that you're going to see in the tournament. So I thought that was a really good game for them to play before kind of going into the SEC tournament and then into March Madness. You got a little bit of experience playing a different style because you've played all these SEC games all season. You got to know how to win a game like that, where it's not necessarily the style of game you want to play. So, I mean, if they have a good draw where they don't have to run into an SEC opponent, which is going to be tough, as many teams as the SEC is going to get in this thing, maybe they get a nice draw where you don't have to run into a Florida or a Alabama or an Auburn or whoever until maybe the Final Four or the Elite Eight at the earliest. And anything can happen in an Elite Eight game. I mean, it's just, anything goes type deal.
The one I've seen schemed up the most is that Tennessee ends up in Duke's.
I would 100% bet on that happening. That would be my prediction, that they will be in Duke's bracket.
And I would welcome it, because I'm very interested to see Duke get truly tested. The ACC has been a cakewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, no offense to them, Duke, you play who's in front of you. And they have been destroying every team they play. I mean,
and
they're winning
like
every game by 25 points.
They played UNC Saturday, and I know it's a rivalry game, and it doesn't quite have the same juice, but they ended up winning the game fairly easily, putting it away late. But there was a stretch there where Tennessee had a lead in the second half where it's like, are they? I mean, UNC's been bad this season. They have not been good at all. They've been real inconsistent. They don't have a lot. They don't have any direction on offense, and they gave Duke a little bit of a run. Wake Forest, coached by old Tennessee assistant Steve Forbes. I don't think they're going to make the tournament, and they played them down to the wire at home earlier this season. So even some of the weaker competition in the ACC has given Duke some issues, even though they've won the games in the end. I think there's definitely something to that. We'd like to see them get tested for sure. Because I don't see number one overall in the country the way some others do. Just because, like you're saying, the competition's just been so weak all season in the ACC. Whereas Tennessee, Auburn, all these teams, and they've had to grind it out every game. Even the games against the South Carolina has been a grind this season. It's good for you in the long run, I'd say, for sure.
Yeah, and they feel like they could be kind of like some of those Calipari, Kentucky teams that had, just uber talented freshmen, young guys. But when it really got down to brass tacks at the end of the season, like they just had never been there. And you freeze up and you get, Zakai Ziegler has been there 1,000 times and he's going to make a better play than you because he's been there when the whole thing's on the line. And I feel like that could be, and I don't think that John Shire has shown that he's a great in-game coach.
I agree.
I think Barnes coached circles around him a couple of years ago in the tournament. And as much as we've given Barnes a hard time over March, he went out there and coached around Shire. So I'm interested to see how they do. And the one that I saw mocked was UConn as the 8 seed, and Duke would play UConn in the second round, which that's just, tough for you if you get stuck in that spot with UConn as an 8 seed.
Regardless of how their season's going, I wouldn't be excited about running into UConn. That dude gets his team fired up as crazy as he can be at times.
I mean, you cannot argue with 2 straight national titles.
Yeah.
Like, that is what that guy has done. And I mean, that would be like right now being like, well, Tony Vitello team. Nope, you can't say that.
Same thing. Like nobody wants to play
national title.
Nobody wanted to play Kirby Smart in Georgia in the playoff, no matter what their quarterback status was. Just like you said earlier, those guys have been there. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how Duke's kind of path plays out. I do think Cooper Flagg's a dog. I mean, that guy wants to win. He plays hard, but he's just one guy. And when he couldn't make the play against Clemson, they lost that game. That game they should have won. Absolutely. So it's going to be a fun tournament. I've been excited about this all year. I think we've kind of felt like this tournament would have this vibe where anyone from like a 4 or 5 seed up could potentially have a chance to get hot and win. I just hope it's not Auburn or Alabama or Florida or something like that if it can't be Tennessee.
Anybody but Auburn. But I am excited because they have shown down the stretch, they have discovered some guys that can make plays late. Because early on in the season, it looked like, well, even still in the later games, even ones that they've ended up pulling out, they still play a little hot potato where they just go, you take the shot, you take the shot, you take the shot. But they have found Lanier has gained confidence in late spots. I think it just took him time. Is he the super clutch Dalton Connect guy? No. But he has gained that confidence and gotten better in those late spots. I mean, he did that against South Carolina. It was looking a little dicey against South Carolina, and the guy just took over. I mean, what did he put up? 27 or something in that game against South Carolina, and you won by 10. So you are finding guys that can score late. Obviously, ZZ and Mayshak's making plays for you in the clutch. And there are guys there that, as we've said, been there, done that. I believe in their ability. They just have to. History does not bode well with them because they're just whatever it is, whatever voodoo. Just you get to March and you end up playing freaking Loyola Chicago and whatever nonsense happens. But I don't want to speak that into existence because I think if that draw does come where you get Duke, I think that's favorable for Tennessee. One that I saw, it was I forget who would have been in the first round. I mean, you're the 2 seed. It would have been a sort of no name. And then you play Louisville, who you've already beat. And it was kind of a series of teams. Texas A&M was another one that you would have played maybe in the Sweet 16. Like, these are teams you already know that you can beat. There's favorable draws out there. That's going to be the name of the game. I will ask you this, Zach. I remember we talked about this last year too. You're not going to purposefully lose in the SEC tournament. But is this another year where we kind of go, we'd probably be better off if we just, skipped it? Are you feeling that way again?
I mean, we've kind of talked all season about this team, does the defensive effort catch up with them at times when they play a bunch of games in a row, or a couple tough games with a short break in between? It's 3 games over 3 days at the most, and you've got maybe 3 full days off, depending on if you play Thursday or Friday. So I don't know how much it really impacts you. It would be nice, I think, to have those couple of days off, just because you've used such a short rotation this entire season. It's a lot of minutes that your guys are playing. You haven't had the depth because of some situations that came up during the season. But man, I mean, it's just three wins and you have an SEC tournament championship, and that's fun no matter what. I mean, I know you've done it before, but that's still something. Like those are hard to get. You don't take them for granted. I don't see Rick Barnes taking his foot off the gas at any point this weekend. I think his goal is to win it, and maybe you win it, and then you sneak into a 1 seed possibly, depending on how everything else turns out.
I think that's the only way. That's the only way.
Is it worth it then? I guess it depends on the draw, but it really did seem to help them last year, losing to Mississippi State surprisingly early on, and getting some rest and going all the way to the Elite Eight, and really just running into a matchup that was just, you weren't going to win the way it was called, and the matchups there. So I don't know. I could see it either way. That's a tough question.
Yeah, I think Kyle kind of presents an interesting. If you could guarantee a number 1 seed with winning the tournament, then I would want it. And I
if you play Auburn Saturday, that's gonna be a tough game.
Oh yeah, I mean that, and it will be emotional.
A&M's the most likely team on Friday, right?
I'd have to check.
It's A&M or Texas or Vanderbilt, I think. One of those 3.
Yes, you're definitely on. Oh, where is it? I had it. I texted it earlier to a whole set of people.
Yeah, I mean, and Vanderbilt you've already lost to. A&M you've won at their place. You beat Texas. Those are tough matchups too. I mean, it's going to take a lot out of you to win those 3 games, regardless of who makes the championship game, obviously.
Well, the one where I looked at it would just be, it would be such an amazing win. Yes, it'd be Texas A&M, Texas, or Vanderbilt. That's right. I just couldn't remember on the Texas A&M one for some reason. And then it would most likely be Auburn in the semifinal. But that game against Auburn, that is one where it would be so sweet to, first of all, get another shot at Auburn. I mean, you were so close the first time around. Get another shot at them, potentially beat Bruce. Now, the last time you played them in the SEC tournament, it was the title game in 2018, I think, and you lost. And so you've done it before, and it's really bitter losing to Bruce like that, especially in a championship game. But that would just be, that's right up there. I really wanted the opportunity to beat Kentucky. That's not going to happen. But obviously getting to beat Bruce on the way to a title, that would be pretty special, pretty special. So I don't know. The easy thing is this: I'll be okay either way. I'll be happy with a win.
The worst outcome is if you make the SEC tournament championship game and lose.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Elias says it here in the comments. Said, "Do you think beating Auburn would actually result in a 1 seed?" No, I don't. That's the big thing.
Got to win all 3, and then you don't know.
Like at this point, Florida, especially if Florida ends up making it to the title game. Like if Florida loses their first game, and Alabama loses their first game and then you beat Auburn, okay, maybe on an outside chance you're there for a 1 seed, but otherwise, I mean, it's just not. And so, on the 1 seed, I think that chance passed you by, unfortunately, for yet another year. But yeah, I'm okay either way. It's fine. This year I'm not going to the SEC tournament this year, so I won't have the situation that I had last year, where I drive 3 hours and Tennessee gets their teeth kicked in. That's yeah, so I will avoid that at least. But all right, that's basketball for the most part. Obviously, when Tennessee gets its draw next weekend, we will talk all about that a week from now. But let's move on to a little bit of spring football. Not a ton to talk about as far as spring football goes, because, I mean, it's the first couple of sessions of spring ball. Nothing's really happened. I mean, you could take away from the small amount of tape that we have what you'd like to, but I think the most interesting stuff that we saw is stuff that you've written about, Zach, on A2ZSports.com. But we saw some interviews with some of the players. There were specifically some freshmen that I think were interesting. But what did you see out of some of the media sessions so far in spring?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and we were talking about this before we started, that Tennessee gives some of those young guys an opportunity to speak to the media. You know, they're young players, and they're so polished. They're so much more polished now than even 10 years ago. You can tell these guys really go through some media training, and they just understand how to talk to the media, how to be engaging for the most part, and not give away too much. But it was enjoyable listening to those guys talk. Sometimes you listen to young players talk and they just haven't had that kind of media guidance, and they don't really know how to handle those interviews till they're a little bit older and they have more experience with it. These are a smart group of guys, though. They're motivated. They're eager to learn. They don't think they have it all figured out. You can tell that. I really liked listening to Travis Smith, stud wide receiver that, I wouldn't be surprised if he forces his way onto the field this season. He just seems to have that kind of mentality. I mean, he mentioned earlier this year that he wants 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns as a true freshman. I don't know if that's realistic. Nobody's even done that for Tennessee the last 2 years in this offense. And even Ryan Williams at Alabama didn't put up those types of numbers last year. He's a little short of that. But just that, that's a huge goal to have. He also said he wanted to be on the AB honor roll too. So, I mean, he's got his priorities to be successful, there. He's focused on being good in the classroom, being good in the field. He's a competitive guy. He's already talking about going at it with Boo Carter in practices. And you could sense his confidence also, though, the willingness to learn, the understanding that he needs to grow, that there's a lot that he doesn't know yet. But he seemed really confident. So I liked hearing that from him. Isaiah Campbell was another one that was really engaging and had some jokes back and forth with the media, talking about his playing weight and playing tackle and getting up to 280 and kind of the process that he's went through to get to that point with his weight. He seemed like another guy that's eager to come in and do what's asked of him and try to get on the field as quick as possible. I think that's the main thing with these young guys is they got to be willing to come in and compete immediately at a high level if they're going to play. Like the acclimation period, it's tough. It's a big jump from high school to college, but you got to make it pretty quick, really in spring, to gain the trust of the coaching staff to really be able to carve out a role, especially with this Tennessee staff that really seems to like older veteran guys. But I've been impressed by that group so far, just as far as the way they've held their media sessions and the way that they've been in that public eye and been able to handle that pretty well. It's a big jump, like I said. So I encouraged. We'll see how much those guys actually contribute. I thought another thing too, Travis Smith was asked about Radarius Jackson, another 4-star wide receiver that Tennessee signed. And I feel like that guy's kind of been forgotten about. We talked all about the wide receiver group, right? Like you got Chris Brazel's the only returning starter. Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley, we think is going to play a big role for this team. Amari Jefferson that came in from Alabama. Boo Carter, seeing snaps on that side of the ball. Travis Smith, we mentioned. Jackson's another guy, though, that he wasn't rated that far below Smith. Yeah. And Smith was talking about him today and was like, that guy's like, there's something about him. He wants to be great. He's just different, and it has been a lot of hype. But maybe that's a guy that can come in and surprise and be another option in the passing game. You need a rotation that goes 6, 7 deep. Wide receivers, guys get banged up. You never know what's going to happen in the course of a game. I thought that depth last season, there were guys there that had some experience, but they weren't real dynamic, right? I mean, you moved on from Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod and even Squirrel White, kind of in favor of some of these younger guys that you think are more talented. They're young, but I think they got a lot of potential. And I think they got the right mindset. You got to be confident as a receiver, and I think these guys are.
It was pretty clear in watching some of those that these are more culture guys that Heupel has brought in. He's trying to recruit the 5 stars, and it is the NIL era. Everybody's kind of out for number one, understandably so, I guess. But you could see with these dudes, like, oh, they're gonna fit in here and they're gonna buy in. Like, and there's a lot of value to that, because when you get high rated guys, they can be me. And I want the numbers. I want the playing time. I want the money. And I'm sure to some extent behind closed doors, these guys are 18. There's probably some of that, but still, even just publicly facing, the fact that they let these dudes talk to the media at all, I think says something. I mean, Butch would never do that in the past. And just having guys that are that young and fresh on the scene, ready and willing to talk to media like that at all is pretty cool. I mean, I even had a friend today, and we'll see, but he texted in about David Sanders and his media session and said, "Oh, it really reminds me of Trey Smith." I was like, oof.
Yeah, I can see that.
As somebody who was around and interviewed Trey Smith on multiple occasions, as a high bar, he was. I mean, that kid was awesome with media, and obviously, I mean, he's one of the greats. And I just hope that they really do in the long run have the buy-in and are kind of the guys that it seems like they're going to be from these interviews. You can only take so much away from an interview. But I love hearing guys have big aspirations where, hey, go out there and show it, young man. I'm ready as long as they actually let you play. I mean, with Travis Smith, I guess I'm kind of dubious. I don't know if they'll actually let the man on the field because they have not really shown a penchant for doing that with young guys at the wide receiver spot. But hey, I love it regardless, and it's good. And it's kind of, again, so far, it's sort of the only thing you can really take away from spring. Obviously, we'll see with the spring game. And it's a weird that it's not going to be on TV. They announced that, and it's going to have limited seating because of construction. Both of those things are kind of lame, but still, it's still going to be fun, and we'll talk about all of it. But what else did you have from anything from football, Zach?
Yeah, well, I think, and Elias points out, still in the wide receiver, I know there's a ton of storylines with Tennessee, the cornerbacks, the offensive line, but yeah, he talks about Brew McCoy, right? Like, Brew McCoy moved on. Everybody loves Brew. He's a great Tennessee player. He loved being at Tennessee. He really embraced everything about Tennessee. That's pretty cool to see from a California guy. And I thought he played with great effort. Obviously went through that terrible injury in 23 and didn't seem like he had quite the same speed. Not that he's ever a burner, but it felt like he lost a bit of a step. And I agree with Elias. Like, it feels like he wasn't the best fit with his skill set in this offense. And I think really over the last 2 seasons, we've talked about quarterback play, we've talked about offensive line play, but the receivers just haven't played at the same level that we saw from Cedric Tillman in 21 and when he wasn't hurt in 22, and Jalen Hyatt, and even some guys like Velus Jones in 21 and Javonte Payton. Those guys had made it to the NFL or had a cup of coffee in the NFL, or Cedric Tillman's had some success. Jalen Hyatt's kind of been in a weird situation with the Giants where nothing's went right up there except for Malik Neighbors. You just didn't have that same talent, wide receiver these last 2 years. And I think that's a bigger part of the offensive issues than just the play calling, just the quarterback play, just the offensive line protection. Your receivers got to go make plays. Dante Thornton's going to get drafted he did a really good job at times, but he had some rough moments too. Like there were some plays he could have made where he didn't go get the ball. He got out battled by a DB. He wasn't on the same page as Nico. Like you've got to be a little more crisp in your route running. You got to be a dog going over the middle. Like you can't be afraid to get hit when you turn around to look for the ball and you kind of see somebody in the corner of your eye coming. So I think that elevating the talent in this wide receiver room is going to be huge for this team as long as they actually perform and reach their potential. But that's one of the most exciting things to me about this team. While I feel like this 25 team, I don't really know what to expect, right? Like Greg McElroy said they could go 8-4, or they could win the national championship. That was his thoughts on Tennessee. And I could see that, right? Like I think that's more than fair because there's just so many unknowns. But wide receivers obviously are going to be huge. Mentioned the offensive line too. I think that's the other big thing that you want to come out of spring feeling pretty good about. I think Tennessee has to find their center before the end of spring practice, before the spring game in April, because I think you got to hit I think that guy needs to know all summer he's the guy, or he's got to have a good feeling he's the guy. That way you can get to fall camp and just really hit the ground running. Keep everyone healthy, of course, but if it's Satterwhite, if it's William Satterwhite that ends up being that guy, or if you move Sam Pendleton into center and use somebody else at guard, whatever it is, find that guy, identify that guy, and get your starting five fairly set. I mean, you still want competition there because you're going to need more than 5 offensive linemen to get through the season. Hopefully everybody on Tennessee's roster fighting for those spots understands if they perform, they will get a chance to play depending on how everything works out. But I think you really want to feel good about your starting 5 offensive linemen by the time you exit spring practice. Because if you're going into the summer in this offense and you're still kind of unsure who your center is going to be, or if David Sanders can handle being the starting right tackle, who, by the way, today said he had never played right tackle in his life before. So that's going to be a big adjustment for him if he stays there and Lance Hurd stays at left tackle. Maybe they flip them too. We've seen Tennessee do that with several guys over the years. But like I said, whatever that combination is, you got to find those guys and feel good about it. And that's going to be a huge key to success for this team in 2025. Because if you don't have that figured out, it's going to be a rough go this fall.
I definitely have to admit that I'm starting to sheep it up about the wide receivers. I think I'm buying into it's going to be a good thing that they're flipping over that room all the way. Like I
think they got some dudes, man. Like
I think they do.
Real competitors.
They do. Yes. And the best motivator is competition. They got plenty of that going on. Obviously. I mean, the thing is wide open. And you needed some fresh faces there. You got them all. It's brand new now, except for Chris Brazzell.
And he's got another year of experience for him. And he was, and he has some good moments.
I mean, the guy caught the winning touchdown against Alabama. I mean, he definitely had some catches last year. So I'm buying in on that narrative. The offensive line still very much just we'll see. I feel like they're probably still going to get somebody out of the portal, and if they don't, I'm going to feel like they probably needed to in this next portal round. But
it'd be nice to get a corner specifically.
That too.
I mean, that's the other thing that you're trying to figure out. I mean, I've seen like Caleb Beasley is like playing some safety already instead of corner, so they're trying some different things out. The Jermod McCoy injury really threw things for a loop there. I mean, that was your guy, and Gibson is at spring practice. I'm sure if everyone saw that news. I mean, that's huge, but you've still got some depth and lineup things you got to figure out there. McCoy, that those are huge shoes to fill.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really know exactly where you sit with Ricky Gibson. Everybody's considering it a very good sign that he's practicing with the team and all those things, but you don't know if that's.
I think
the transfer portal thing's behind him. I do too.
Is it ever behind it? I mean, it's always a threat, no matter who you are, right? I mean,
right.
Are you ever comfortable?
And I've seen some people tweeting like, we won't forget that Ricky Gibson. Yeah, you will.
He gets an interception in Gainesville to win the game, and you will.
You will not remember this.
You'll be deleting some tweets.
Yeah. Hopefully it does get cleared up. That would be such an annoying loss. And so, on the whole, as practice progresses and we actually see more and more narratives start to come out, like maybe you're, Boot Carter playing wide receiver or whatever, figuring out the offensive line. We're going to discuss all of that and get to it. But outside of that's football for you, and for now, and we'll get more as we get further into spring. But let's finish. Well, I did want to go back. There was one. Yeah, Kyle said it right here. If we end up with a 2 seed, who'd you guys rather be matched up with as the 1 seed out of the 1 seeds? I didn't want to hit that because I thought it was an interesting question. Just going back to basketball, it's Duke for me.
Yeah,
I think
it's Duke because we've already proven that Duke under Shire does not want to play the physical game that Tennessee wants to play. So I mean, you do run the risk of, do you get an official that's whistle happy, an officiating crew? Seems like a lot of times in the tournament, they want to let them play a little more, and they certainly did the last time Tennessee played Duke in the tournament. But regardless of that, Duke does not like matching up against Tennessee. So I think I'm with you. I think that's a matchup that favors Tennessee, and Meshack, I assume, would guard Cooper Flagg.
I think so.
I don't see why he wouldn't, and I think that would be a really fun matchup to watch.
And I don't want it to be Houston. I know that much. I don't think they're going to put Tennessee up as a 2 against an SEC. I don't think it'll be in Auburn or Florida. But if it did, I mean, you played both. You almost beat Auburn. You did beat Florida by 30. So
it's gonna be. You're talking about an Elite 8 matchup anyway. So it's going to be tough regardless.
But I know I don't want it to be Houston because they play the same exact game that you do. And Kelvin Sampson has had more success in March than Rick Barnes. Unfortunately, I hate that I have to say that, but it's just true. And it would be an ugly drag out rock fight. Just ugh. And so, yeah, no thanks. Let's play Duke. Let's play against Duke. Put Jemai Meshack on Cooper Flagg and let's see what happens. Let's roll the dice there. All right, let's finish with a little bit of baseball. Not a big series that Tennessee won or anything like that, but they had now under their belt, this team has the best start in program history at 16-0. They beat the absolute snot out of St. Bonaventure over the weekend. I went to the game on Friday, which just so happened to be an absolute hero performance from Liam Doyle. What was it? 13 strikeouts. And then the rest of the pitching crew that night came out and threw a no-hitter. The 9th no-hitter in program history, if I'm thinking correctly, and the first since 2002. Absolutely ridiculous. You run ruled St. Bonaventure in every game. That first game didn't have a run rule, so you couldn't. Yeah. But you smacked them around nonetheless. These guys just keep. You haven't played anybody yet. The best team you played is Arizona, and you disposed of them relatively easily too. But this team just keeps doing everything to put the rest of America on notice. And obviously that could be capped off by beating up Florida this weekend. But have you been watching this baseball team, Zach?
Yeah, it was just you got to see the St. Bonaventure's pitcher in person that was kicking the moon in his delivery on Friday night. It was very unique, but
very goofy.
Yeah. You'd like to see this team, I think, get in some kind of grinded out games because you're eventually going to be in those. But every time a game starts to have that feel, they just hit a ton of home runs and pull away. So I mean, they've had a couple of games that looked like they were going to be tough. Who did they play? Was it the midweek game or last week where they got a big lead and then they kind of came back and tied it or got
Bradford.
Yes, and we thought it was over. We were talking junk in the group chat, and all of a sudden, here they come back, and then they run ruled that game, didn't they? I mean,
22-9.
Yeah, it was
they allowed 9 runs from Bradford.
Yeah. So it's like anytime they even get in a game this close, they find a way to just figure it out and blow the other team out. There's probably a lot of records that they won't set this year, just because there's probably a 20 innings worth of game that they haven't played this season because of run rules, which I know hurts Tony Vitello because your guys lose at bats that way, and you lose innings that you can have guys out there throwing and getting better. But it's been pretty amazing so far. And still, I think D1 has them as the number 2 team behind LSU, who lost to Omaha. It's bizarre, but I kind of like it because I think we've talked about this before. I think Tennessee, if they even pay attention to it at this point, they seem like they're in such a groove. They're just playing their game, but that is kind of one little thing. It's like, hey, not everyone believes in you yet. Don't be drinking the Kool-Aid. Keep going out there and performing.
Yeah,
but it's it's going to get tougher here. They're going to lose eventually, and you can't freak out if they do. Like even if it's a midweek game, those games are weird anyways at times because you're not using your best pitchers, and the other team is fired up. They're playing like it's Game 7 of the World Series because they get to go to Tennessee and try to beat the national champs. And for you, it's just like, yeah, it's another midweek game before we go play Florida or whoever's on the schedule. But that's baseball. They're going to lose. But yeah, this team so far, especially with Liam Doyle looking like he's going to be a guy in March or in May and June when you get to postseason play. Those are the type of guys that you need. And you won one. You had guys last year. We talked about the way that they had to be creative with putting the pitching together. If everyone stays healthy and if AJ Russell is able to be healthy at the end of the year and be a contributor, I know they're going to try to take it easy with him the next month or so to ensure that he's ready to go in those games in April, May, and June. It's going to be hard to bet against Tennessee if they stay healthy.
It really will be. And it's exciting times. Obviously, we talked about it after they won the title last year, that team you had in 22 was better than your title team, weirdly. And so even now, if you have a better team, doesn't mean you're going to win a national championship. Because we've said it so much on this show, baseball is all about the vibes. And that weekend where that incredible 22 team lost, the vibes were off. And it's Drew Gilbert.
Drew Gilbert. It was your lone moment where you you let your competitiveness get the best of you in that one.
Yep. Yeah. But I mean, on balance, that was a quote unquote better team. I mean, it was one of the best regular season teams ever in the history of college baseball.
Yeah, it was unreal.
And you might be on the doorstep of another season like that right now. If the hitting continues and Liam Doyle is really what he looks like, but it's no guarantee that you're just going to walk in. I mean, if you go ahead,
there's so much depth. There's just so much depth. I mean, a guy has an off night. You got guys on the bench that can come and they look like first round draft picks. It's unreal, the depth.
The real difference maker is that all the way down the lineup, 1 through 9, you got a dude who can shell on you at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, period. It goes all the way down. Levi Clark is a true freshman, and he has 6 or 7 home runs already so far. And I was going to say Mike Abernathy, Jay Abernathy, he's not hitting home runs, but he gets on base a bunch. And when he gets on base, he's an automatic stolen base. I mean, instantly he's at second base. And so they just hit you every which way. And even, in fielding, like, you really wish that you could have Ariel Antigua at shortstop. Because he is easily the most crisp shortstop that you have. But he can't, he's just not a great hitter. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like, even if you make some defensive mistakes, your offense is so good. That's what happened last year. Your offense was just so good. You could, and I think this is probably going to be true again this year. It always felt like in any game, even if the starting pitcher came out and was giving you a hard time, it always felt like, just give it till they get to the relievers. Just get to the bullpen, and then we're going to score like 7 runs in the 8th inning. It always just felt like that. No matter what, they were going to figure out a way to figure their pitchers out. And it was coming. And I think this lineup, top to bottom, you don't have that unbelievable star power that you had with Christian Moore, but you probably have a more balanced, deeper, across the board, better, if that's the word you want to use, better lineup this year. And we'll get to see it proved out against Florida this weekend. I would guess they probably lose one. 1 out of 3. Florida's a top 5 team right now. They're extremely good. They have a dude that is going nuts, hitting the ball too. So I would expect that to be a very, very tough series. Nothing's going to be easy. I'd say prepare yourself. It might be a meltdown on Twitter, but prepare yourself for a loss. It's going to happen at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Florida's very good.
you lose 2 out of 3, and it's disappointing, but It sucks, but there's no magic button you can push in baseball to like guarantee a win. You can't go out there and be like, we're going to play harder than these guys and win this game like in football or basketball. Like sometimes it's just all it takes is a pitcher being on and just being a little off at the plate and a couple of miscues or a bloop falling or something, some bad luck, and you lose a game that you should have won. So let's definitely not freak out, but let's also sweep them. Yeah, so
yes. Go out, sweep Florida. Because you have the talent, and at this moment, at least, you got the vibes on your side. And
for sure. And Tony Vitello's talked about that, kind of like the vibes on this team, and he talked about how 2020 team was going to be pretty good, but COVID and all that prevented that from happening. But I think just the willing, you got a roster full of dudes that were the best player on their team at every team they've probably been on before they got to Tennessee. And now you're having to find ways to get those guys into a lineup, and that can be tough to manage, especially when you haven't been used to playing in those roles. Like Jay Abernathy's probably never come off the bench in his life, but he's having to now, and he's doing it and still playing his game and being effective and being a threat, and just like Tony Vitello said, when he's in the game, it's just a different feeling, like something's going to happen. So the fact that he's been able to retain that, not get down because maybe he's not playing as much as he wants to. That's the kind of stuff that you have to have happen to win a championship with this much talent. Like, you've got to find a way to make the talent and the vibes all mesh. And Vitello's a magician at doing it. I don't know what it is,
crazy,
but he truly is a magician when it comes to managing a roster full of different personalities that have high expectations for themselves, knowing that there's only 8 starting spots in the field every night, working guys in, and in short games, because you're only playing 7-inning games half the time. It's really amazing.
Pissed.
Yeah.
He's getting pissed that his games are short.
But I think his ability to do that is the biggest reason that this team's been successful. You got to have the talent, obviously, but this run, it's because of the clubhouse, the locker room that he's fostered just through who he is. Like, it's organic. Like, he's just like, he's quirky. He's perfect. He's perfect for Tennessee. Like, you listen to his media sessions and he goes off on these weird, like, sidetracked conversations and kind of like snaps back into it. And you never know where he's going. And I think that kind of loose vibe, the players feed off of that. And that's why they kind of reflect his personality.
And you really do. As you said, just kind of his weirdness, his oddities. Like, you almost have the Mike Leach of college baseball, except Mike Leach is winning national championships.
Yeah.
Like,
it's in his own way, but it is very similar. But, Leach kind of did that at times to not say anything. I think like that was his big secret was, we're going to tell these funny stories and you're going to forget about the issues that the team's having or going 7-5. Vitello's still pretty candid. He gives you lots of information, but he does get wildly sidetracked at times.
I mean, and you think about how much coaching matters. Like Kyle says it right here. What about Texas A&M? They just keep losing. I think they're like 9-6 overall. Was the coach the entire thing? Freaking Schlossnagel goes to Texas. Texas looks good so far. I mean, they've only lost a couple of games.
It's a big part of it, man. All these SEC teams have talent. Like, they're all really talented players. They're all, like I said, the most talented players on their teams their entire lives until they got the SEC. You got to have more than just the talent to win in the SEC and to win every week.
I mean, Liam Doyle, I feel like that's a great example. There's been a lot of Ole Miss fans that are like, well, just wait till SEC play when he... No. And they cite stuff that he did last year. Well, his coach wasn't Frank Anderson last year.
Yeah.
And he wasn't in the strength and conditioning program that Tennessee has. Tony Vitello wasn't the head coach for him.
Sometimes just like a simple mechanical thing in your delivery, as far as where you break the glove or where your release point is, maybe you're doing something with your hips and not getting into the ground enough, like or your pitch grips. I mean, there's so many little subtle things with pitching that can take a 4.5 ERA guy to like 2.5. Like, it is the weirdest sport at times, but sometimes it's just a slight adjustment. Frank Anderson has been money with those adjustments.
Yeah. Dude's a magician. So we shall see. Florida this weekend. So excited to see how it goes. Otherwise, well, and there's thinking of Tony and his press conferences, he has been going absolutely crazy over and rightfully so, over the Alberto Ozuna situation. Tony got very, very heated, and he was kind of saying to the media, like, why aren't you going out there writing stories about it? I feel like I'm the only one that's indignant over this. And
I think part of it's because nobody really fully understands what the hell the issue is, and it's very hard to grasp why this is an issue, especially after the Diego Pavia deal with the Vanderbilt quarterback. Like I've thought about writing about some of it too, but I'm like, I don't understand what's going on and why this is even a thing at this point. It's so simple, open and shut.
It's so dumb, and that's easily the word to describe it. It's stupid. This whole thing is absolutely idiotic because the NCAA is a black hole of corrupt, evil idiots.
Osuna called them out today too.
Yes, and I was about to say he wrote a sort of open letter to the NCAA. His teammates are retweeting it, saying "Free Birdo," and every media member is picking up on. I picked up on it, and I said, "Free Birdo, abolish the NCAA." We need to do both. It doesn't need to just be free Birdo Ozuna. It needs to be into the NCAA because they are the real problem at the end of this day. Because they still hold the keys here. This lawsuit doesn't matter. Just let this dude play college baseball. It's so stupid.
It's absurd, and it's sad too, because here's the thing. You've already cost him 16 games, I think it is.
Yep.
16 games he'll never get back. Can never play in. And, he probably's not going to play this weekend. It might not play the entire season. We don't know how this is going to play out. But eventually, like, we know how this ends, right? Like, Pavia's already won. Nothing that's happening in NCAA right now is going backwards, right? Like, they're losing more and more power by the day. So eventually, this is going to be, like, the way it is for Pavia is going to be the standard, right? Like, that's the assumption is you're eventually going to win this, but it'll be too late for Osuna. So how cruel is it that you're really just holding this guy hostage because you can, knowing that eventually, if this is a year down the road, he'd be able to play? Well, he's not going to have that opportunity. It's unfortunate for him, even more than it is for the program. Like, Tennessee baseball is in a fine spot right now. I don't know if they need Osuna. It'd be nice to have. He's a power bat. You're going to play him if he's able to play, right? If he gets cleared, but you're in a good spot without him. It's really for him. It's just super unfortunate, but luckily Tony Vitello is like, we're going to make it worth his while being here. Whatever happens, it's going to be worth his while. So good on Tony Vitello for that.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Tennessee just has a absolute just ridiculous amount of talent already is a big factor too, where a ton of people weren't talking about it, because you just go, oh, they can't have Alberto Ozuna. Oh no, they just still have the best team in America, like even without the guy. Oh, so sorry for Tennessee.
That's probably another reason it's been a little bit overshadowed too, is Tennessee's playing so well. If they were 10-6 or 9-7 or something, maybe you're like, oh well, if they could get their guy cleared, maybe they have won a couple more games. I mean, it's hard to complain about much when you're 16-0.
Definitely. We'll see what happens. Hopefully this push from everybody actually gets the NCAA to take some kind of action.
Yeah, I don't think they care. Lord They're knows. Heartless, soulless.
I mean, I saw Brent Hubbs say just earlier after he put that letter out, if he would have just stayed at a previous school, he would be eligible to play. But instead, he went to Tennessee, and so he can't. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We'll find out. And if he does get freed, then we'll talk about that next week.
In his letter, and he said something like, why did you tell me to file the waiver if you were just going to deny it right off the bat?
Don't waste my time. Just tell me I can't play.
Yeah.
Freaking waste my time, waste my resources. Lord.
Yeah, I mean, he could have figured something else out.
Yeah. But hopefully long term, even if he doesn't get to play, maybe supposedly he wants to be a coach, and going to give him experience there. So, all right. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, that's a show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. As always, everybody just hanging out, leaving great comments. We couldn't do this without you. I always say it, and I always mean it. We truly appreciate it. We will be back talking about Tennessee's bid in the NCAA tournament next week. And yeah, that's it. All right. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.